In every man, there exists a silent war, one not waged with weapons, but with whispers. The whisper of temptation, the beckon of pleasure, the pull of lust. It doesn't scream, it seduces. It tells him he deserves it, that no one will know, that to be a man is to indulge. And this is where most men fall, quietly, invisibly, day after day. They don't fall in war zones. They fall in bedrooms, in late-night scrolls, in fleeting glances exchanged with strangers, in the digital dens of pornography and the empty conquests of hookup culture. They fall not from bullets, but from biology, not from external enemies, but from an internal cowardice that bows to desire instead of commanding it. And this, Friedrich Nietzsche understood better than most. He saw that man's greatest threat was not poverty or death, but enslavement to his lower self. Nietzsche never wrote explicitly about semen retention or modern-day lust traps, but his philosophy screamed of self-overcoming. His concept of the Übermensch, the Overman, was not a tyrant who dominated others, but a disciplined being who first conquered himself. He who cannot obey himself, he warned, will be commanded. And today, most men are commanded, not by a tyrant, but by the tyrannical pull of their own impulses. The very society they believe empowers them actually engineers their compliance through comfort. Porn is free, lust is normalized, and men, thinking they are liberated, have become more domesticated than ever. Nietzsche would see them not as evolved, but as last men, those he scorned for choosing safety and pleasure over danger and greatness. To tame lust is to revolt against the programming. It is to say no to what the world tells you is harmless. But this war is not easy. It is ancient. The Greeks told of Odysseus, who had to lash himself to his ship's mast to resist the sirens' call. He knew their beauty wasn't beauty. It was destruction in disguise. And so must you know. Every seductive image, every easy pleasure, every tempting woman with hollow eyes and practiced poses, these are your sirens. They are not your destiny, they are your delay. They promise release, but deliver regret. They give you moments of ecstasy and decades of weakness. Nietzsche would not beg you to abstain for moral reasons. He didn't care for sin or salvation. He would command it for strength, because the man who tames lust develops an inner voltage that separates him from the herd. And in Nietzsche's eyes, the herd was mediocrity incarnate. Lust, unchecked, is the great equalizer. No matter how intelligent or gifted a man is, lust can reduce him to an animal. Look at the kings who fell for courtesans, the presidents destroyed by scandal, the geniuses distracted by sex. Lust turns titans into beggars, and that is precisely why it must be mastered. Nietzsche's lens wasn't clouded by religion or dogma. He simply asked, does this serve your becoming, or does it enslave you? The man who rises is not necessarily the strongest, but the one who rejects what weakens him. That rejection begins in the shadows, in the lonely places where no one is watching, where the man must face his most seductive enemy, himself. This is not a battle you win once. It is fought daily, hourly, and it requires a warrior's spirit. But most modern men were not trained to be warriors. They were trained to be consumers, addicted, distracted, docile. Nietzsche warned of this flattening of man's soul. He feared the rise of the comfortable, pacified male who no longer dreams of conquest, no longer yearns for danger or greatness, but simply wishes to be left alone with his pleasures. The kind of man who worships orgasms instead of outcomes. Nietzsche's philosophy was a flame against this decay, a call to burn away what is base and reveal what is divine. Lust is not to be feared, but forged. It is raw energy, and like all energy, it can either burn your house down or power your empire. So ask yourself, not in theory, but in practice, what would happen if you stopped giving in? What if you redirected the hours, the energy, the emotional roller coaster of chasing validation and dopamine into discipline? into silence, into obsession with your own evolution. You would become dangerous, not in a violent way, but in a rare way. You would stand out. People would sense your stillness, your control, your aura. Nietzsche believed that such men would redefine humanity, not by preaching, but by embodying something superior. They would not seek approval. They would not follow trends. They would walk alone if necessary, because they answer to something higher than lust, the will to power. The first step to rising above the masses is not external, it is internal. It begins with restraint, with silence, with choosing purpose over pleasure. It begins when you feel that urge to give in and instead stare it in the face and say, "Not today." Every time you do, you don't just resist, you evolve. You train your nervous system to obey you, not your hormones. And in that small, invisible victory, a new man is born, one Nietzsche would recognize. A man who dares to rise while others sleep. A man who tames lust, not because he is weak, but because he is becoming powerful beyond measure. To understand Nietzsche's secret is to understand the transformation of man from slave to sovereign, not through domination of others, but through the radical mastery of himself. Most men today cannot comprehend what it means to become something more than what they are, because they've never stood still long enough to question the storm that brews within them. They are ruled by the chase, distracted by cheap pleasure, and trained by society to obey every itch. But Nietzsche's Overman, the ideal to which all men must strive, is forged through suffering, silence, and the sublimation of chaos, and nothing symbolizes that chaos more than lust. Tamed lust is not the absence of desire, it is desire harnessed like a wild horse yoked to a chariot, charging toward destiny. Nietzsche once wrote, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." What he meant is this: power is born from the violent parts of the self, those urges, instincts, and passions that are usually dismissed, suppressed, or indulged without thought. But the man who transcends doesn't kill those forces, he reclaims them. Sexual energy, when mastered, becomes spiritual voltage. It sharpens his intuition, it fuels his creation, it replaces desperation with direction. This is why the path to becoming the Overman begins in the arena of lust. Because if a man cannot tame his own need for pleasure, how can he be trusted to shape the world? The Overman is not a monk, nor is he a libertine. He is a creator of values. In Nietzsche's world, God is dead not because atheism is triumphant, but because man has grown tired of borrowed morality. The Overman doesn't live by rules handed to him. He lives by discipline forged through self-conquest. Lust, then, is not a sin, but a mirror, a test, a measurement of a man's internal strength. Most men fail it. They spill their energy daily into emptiness, trading power for orgasm, mission for momentary validation. But the man on the path to the Overman asks, what could I become if I took all of this energy, all of this hunger, and weaponized it? This secret is hidden in plain sight. History whispers it, though most are too distracted to listen. Nikola Tesla famously remained celibate his entire life, claiming that intimacy with a woman would interfere with his focus and invention. Leonardo da Vinci, too, was known for extreme discipline and transmutation of erotic force into divine artistic output. These men were not lesser for their restraint. They were more precise, more dangerous, more magnetic. Nietzsche believed such men could create a new world because they were no longer prisoners of this one. And herein lies the truth that makes most uncomfortable. Sexual transmutation is not a tactic. It is an initiation, a transformation. When a man steps back from lust, not in shame, but in strength, he awakens something ancient inside him. Call it the will to power. Call it the rise of the self. Call it divine masculinity. In the alchemy of lust, you'll be taken deep into the ancient and forgotten discipline of sexual transmutation, a principle once reserved for monks, warriors, kings, and creators. Whatever name you use, the process is the same. The man becomes less reactive, more sovereign, less emotional, more strategic. He no longer seeks conquest in women, but in challenge, in excellence, in legacy. Lust is no longer his master, but his fuel. Nietzsche never believed in equality. He saw it as a lie that drags men downward. What separated great men from ordinary ones wasn't talent. It was discipline, pain tolerance, and vision. The masses seek release. The Overman seeks refinement. And nowhere is this divergence more visible than in how each handles lust. The average man is consumed by it. The rising man converts it. He doesn't suppress it like a monk or indulge it like an animal. He transmutes it into strength, focus, and charisma. This isn't philosophy for the classroom. It is a blueprint for modern warfare. In a world that rewards indulgence, the man who resists becomes a rebel, a revolutionary, and Nietzsche would argue, a creator of the future. The old morality said, don't touch, don't look, don't sin. Nietzsche's new morality says, don't waste, don't weaken, don't fall for illusions. Lust isn't evil, but it's not your friend. It is your adversary. And the Overman welcomes adversaries because he knows they are the crucibles that shape him. You were never meant to be average. You were born to rise. But that rise requires fire. And that fire must be fueled by more than just motivation or willpower. It must be fed by the very forces that once threatened to destroy you. Lust is one of those forces. If left untrained, it will devour you. But if mastered, it will awaken you. This is Nietzsche's secret. Not some cold, emotionless detachment, but a roaring, unapologetic power that comes only from facing the self, slaying the lower nature, and stepping into sovereignty. The Overman is not a fantasy. He is the final form of the disciplined man. There comes a point in a man's journey when resistance becomes second nature. The urges that once commanded his movements now kneel before his mission. The temptations that once weakened him become mere noise in the background. At this stage, the man has crossed a line. He is no longer just resisting lust, he has transcended it. He has become the master of his domain. And in Nietzsche's framework, this man is rare, because most never make it past the struggle. They bounce between guilt and indulgence, between shame and relapse. But the man who persists, who climbs the mountain with bleeding feet and burning lungs, finds something at the summit that most men will never see: cold clarity, vision without interference, purpose without pollution. The man who tames lust doesn't just gain control, he gains freedom. Not the freedom society sells him, which is really just license to indulge. No, he gains true freedom, the ability to say no to himself, to delay gratification, to endure discomfort, to choose mission over moment. This kind of man is terrifying to a world built on consumption, because you cannot manipulate him with pleasure. You cannot enslave him with images. You cannot distract him with dopamine. He does not chase women. He does not need validation. He does not need to prove anything to anyone, because he is building something greater than approval: legacy. Nietzsche's Overman is not just a thinker or a philosopher. He is a man of action, a creator of new tables of value. And in this final form, lust is no longer his battlefield. It is his furnace. Every urge resisted becomes fuel for his empire. His energy is focused like a laser, cutting through confusion, doubt, and mediocrity. His mornings are productive, his nights are peaceful. He sleeps with a clear conscience because his days are not wasted chasing shadows. And when he walks into a room, people feel something, not arrogance, but intensity, not ego, but certainty. This is the result of erotic control. It's not celibacy for the sake of being pure, it's focus for the sake of being powerful. The greatest empires have fallen to lust. The strongest men have been undone by a single night of weakness. This isn't moral posturing, it's history, and it will happen again. But the man who understands this and acts accordingly becomes the exception to the rule. He becomes the man other men whisper about, the one who seems untouchable, the one whose eyes say, "I've seen the dragon, and I didn't run, I tamed it." This man doesn't speak loudly, he doesn't need to. His presence does the talking. Because self-control emits a frequency that cannot be faked. It's the rarest currency in a world flooded with instant access. When you become this man, your entire relationship with the world shifts. Women are no longer a goal, they are a reflection. Opportunities chase you because your aura signals leadership. Your body becomes sharper, your thoughts more precise, your intuition louder. You walk differently, you choose differently. You no longer seek pleasure as a reward, you seek fulfillment as a path. And in this shift, you discover something Nietzsche alluded to often: the sacred burden of becoming, the heavy crown of sovereignty, the cold beauty of walking alone toward a future only you can see. But understand this path is not for everyone. It requires sacrifice, it demands solitude. It will force you to bury old parts of yourself, the needy boy, the addicted adolescent, the self-sabotaging shadow. You will grieve him. But you must leave him behind if you want to become more than a man. You must become an ideal. And Nietzsche's Overman is exactly that. Not a superhero, but a man fully awake, fully in command of his faculties, no longer moved by the tides of lust or fear. A man who creates himself every single day. In the end, this is not a speech about repression. It is a declaration of war. A war against weakness, a war against mediocrity, a war against the part of you that would rather scroll, click, ejaculate, and sleep than rise, train, lead, and conquer. And when you win that war, not once, but daily, you step into a realm where very few exist. You become the rare man in full command of his kingdom, his mind, his energy, his mission. And from that kingdom, you do not seek comfort, you build monuments. You do not follow trends, you forge paths. You do not desire every woman, you attract the rarest kind of respect, the kind earned only by discipline. You are no longer enslaved by lust. You are no longer part of the masses. You are no longer ordinary. You have risen. And now, you must never descend again. Thus, remember, we are Indeceptor. Becoming Indeceptor is the code they never wanted you to learn. A psychological war map for men, forbidden teachings fused with modern strategy for influence, dominance, and self-mastery. If you want peace, prepare for war. The Indeceptor archive is the complete vault. Every lesson, every revelation, every psychological blueprint I've ever recorded, handcrafted to help you break chains, build discipline, and become undefeatable in a world built to deceive men. No ads, no algorithms, no distractions.